Chapter 135 of Chainsaw Man finally reveals some of Famine Devil's seemingly elaborate plan to take down Chainsaw Man, and along with that, ASA sings a song that she wrote admiring Chainsaw Man. So in other words, a classic Fujimoto chapter where we get very interesting twists and plot points and have it all kind of like bundled up in this slice of life kind of narrative. But this chapter seemingly picks up the morning after the previous one, where the fake Chainsaw Man finally revealed himself on national television. This completely devastated Denji, who thought that his entire identity was being stolen by this guy, so we ended that chapter with him not doing too well, and things don't get much better for him towards the end of this chapter. But before I get to that, this one starts off with ASA watching the news broadcast of the fake Chainsaw Man revealing himself. ASA seems to not buy it at all that this is the actual identity of the real Chainsaw Man, because their personalities are way different. This seems like a more stand-up normal guy, when the Chainsaw Man that she met was much more vulgar and crude, because, you know, we gotta remember that he revealed his grand goals to her of wanting to get intimate with a girl. So she kind of starts getting in her head and thinking about Chainsaw Man. And this is when Yoru interjects as she's eating a sandwich at the kitchen counter that, you know, how could you fall in love with my mortal enemy? And she snaps back immediately saying, no, there's no way I have any feelings for him, which, you know, we all know is a lie, right? But she kind of just chalks it up to, you know, he saved me a bunch of times, so I appreciate that at least. And Yoru seems pretty nonchalant through all of this, which is super weird, but it's revealed why, because she points out that war draws nigh, and goes on to elaborate by saying that the falling devil's mere presence temporarily reversed gravity in places all over the world. All nations suffered damage and simultaneously became poorer. When humans want money, they always go to war, and once they do, they will all remember and fear me. So again, we're getting a little bit of information that hammers home just how big the arrival of the falling devil really was, because I feel like a lot of fans, including myself, were kind of overwhelmed in some ways when it came to the falling devil, because it seemed like she was a lot weaker than the Darkness Devil from part 1. And to top it all off, at the very end of the arc, it's revealed that she was actually controlled by the Famine Devil this entire time. And to that point, we kind of thought it was unheard of that a primal fear would succumb to a horseman. But here we're seeing that just the mere presence of the Falling Devil caused gravity to reverse all over the world, and all this irreversible damage that's making the world unstable. So Yoru's banking on this instability, leading to unrest between countries at some point, which honestly might be building up towards Nostradamus' prophecy. A lot of us think that it's going to be this one event that happens on a certain day, on the specific prophesized date, but it's looking like it's going to be a slow build up to it, with a bunch of factors kind of contributing to the overall apocalypse that's probably going to boil over on this specific day of prophecy. Well, Yoru goes on to tell ASA to just completely forget that Chainsaw Man saved her, and she does the exact opposite. Like, she starts having flashbacks of everything that happened, and super surprisingly to me, she starts reciting this poem in her head about Chainsaw Man, kind of admiring him, and the poem's titled Sentimental Drive. And even on the panel that shows this poem, it also says off to the side, written by Asa Mitaka. So yeah, it's a little cringy, but also very adorable in my opinion. Like, she's so socially awkward that she kind of has to put all her feelings into this poem that she recites to herself in her head. And since Yoru and Asa share a brain, Yoru can hear this entire poem being recited, so they're both feeling the cringe here. And I just think it's a pretty funny interaction between them. But we have like no time to fester in it at all, because out of nowhere, Famine shows up at their kitchen counter, which of course causes Asa and Yoru to freak out a bit, because they did not sense her coming in at all. They start questioning her how she could have possibly gotten in their apartment, and all Fammy wants to know is if she can eat the loaf of bread on the table. Well, she ends up eating the entire loaf of bread and all the jam in the jar, and then she finally points out why she's there. She says that she's there to grant both of their wishes, and she goes on to elaborate and says that Asa wants to help Chainsaw Man and Yoru wants to kill him. Well, both can actually be possible, and this is when Fammy starts to actually reveal all of the information that she knows about Chainsaw Man, which definitely surprised me, because it 100% leaves me wondering, how could she possibly know all of this information? Well, as she elaborates, she says, at the moment, Chainsaw Man has given up on fighting devils to lead an ordinary human life. And she goes on to explain pretty much the whole premise of Denji's life after receiving Pochita's heart, because she points out that devils know that consuming more powerful devils will increase their own strength. So Denji's been kind of just stuck in this cycle of continuous violence with all these devils after him at all times. And she goes on to explain that the goal of the Chainsaw Man Church is to hunt down devils, but not just to protect the public, but also in a sense to protect Chainsaw Man, because this way Chainsaw Man doesn't have to fight, which eventually will cause people to forget about him, which in turn will weaken his devil powers. So that way all these devils won't be after him and he can live a normal life. Fami then asks Asa if she wants to join the Chainsaw Man Church in order to fight for this cause, and her reasoning as to why she should is because Asa more than likely wants to return the favor, and this is a good way for her to do it. Well, even if she does want to, Yoru points out that she will 100% not agree to any of this, and this is when the real conversation starts to me. Fami points out, is the red Chainsaw Man the one you want to fight? Isn't it this black Chainsaw Man? And she pulls up a picture of Pochita from his transformation when he first fought Makima. She goes on to elaborate and says, Black Chainsaw Man and Red Chainsaw Man are not the same person. If you want to fight Black Chainsaw Man, you'll need to turn Red Chainsaw Man back into an ordinary human. The Chainsaw Man that Asa wants to save and the Chainsaw Man that Yoru wants to kill are different beings. Join the Chainsaw Man Church and you can help each other. So there's a ton to unpack there. First of all, Fami somehow knows or was present to everything that happened during Pochita's whole fight with Makima and the hybrid devils, because how else would she have this picture, first of all? And secondly, she had to have witnessed the transformation that Pochita made just before fighting Makima and all these devils for her to even know any of this. What I'm still a little bit confused to is her actual plan on separating Chainsaw Man and Denji. My guess is going to be something similar to what Pochita kind of did by tearing out his core and creating this new body around it, but that was only possible because Denji was using Power's blood to keep him alive. So again, I'm not really sure what their exact plan is on separating them and not killing Denji himself, who's technically, you know, the red Chainsaw Man that they're referring to here. Well, this all sounds very interesting, but Asa still isn't sold that Fami's actually looking out for the side of good, quote unquote, and she's still very hesitant as to why she should trust her in the first place. And Fami pretty much just says, you don't have to trust me, you can trust all the people that were saved by Chainsaw Man that are doing actual good out there defeating devils. And it seems like this is enough to sell her, because we then skip to, you know, possibly days later, where there's this news broadcast talking about the Chainsaw Man Church hunting devils, and particularly one devil hunter that's taken down like 10 devils in a matter of days, and surprisingly it's none other than Asa. And we get this awesome shot of her over this Carpenter Bee devil holding this awesome war weapon, and it really seems like she's on this mission now to kind of set Chainsaw Man free in a sense, have him live a normal life, and repay him indirectly by helping the cause of the Chainsaw Man Church. Well, it turns out that Asa's really building a name for herself, because people are starting to rumble about the idea that maybe it wasn't Chainsaw Man that defeated all of those devils where Asa was present, like the Bat Devil and the Cockroach Devil and the Eternity Devil in the aquarium. It might have actually been Asa that killed all of those devils. And of course, it wouldn't be drama if Denji wasn't watching this all being said on TV, and we get this panel of him clenching his fist looking super pissed saying Asa Mitaka. So fueling more of this will they won't they stuff, with now having it seem like Denji's the one that hates Asa when before it was Asa hating Denji. And of course, Asa's involvement in the Chainsaw Man Church isn't going to be as cut and dry as helping Chainsaw Man to live a normal life or something. I'm still completely convinced that there's some very, very sinister underlying plans going on here, and Asa's more than likely just going to be used as another pawn in order to further this prophecy of Nostradamus or some other kind of agenda that they're pushing. New things are being introduced here, but it just raises more questions than we really had before. But what I do know is that the acknowledgement of Pochita as the real Chainsaw Man really changes the dynamic of everything that's going to come forward. So at this point, I'm just counting down the days until we finally see Pochita in the flesh once again.